Solo Leveling by Chugong. Chapter 62 Part 2 Korea in Crisis. Jin-woo walked to the middle of the large, empty gym. Here is good. He put the seat on the floor and poured water on it. He had confirmed several times that this was all a magic beast needed to grow. No soil or even sunlight was needed. Crick, creak. The seed quickly transformed into a tree, accompanied by the sound of cracking bones. Whoa! No matter how many times he witnessed this, it was always a sight to see. Tree-type magic beasts had an incredible vitality that allowed them to survive even in the harshest environments. Jin-woo withdrew to a safe distance. Grah! Gaw! The sapling kept growing, and in less than 5 minutes, it had transformed into a huge magic beast whose head nearly grazed the ceiling of the gym. Grah! Jin-woo ignored the tree's screech echoing inside the gym and summoned the recently upgraded Baru. Come out. Baru emerged from the ground. My king! His visibly changed appearance caught Jin-woo's attention. Instead of an insect's exoskeleton, he wore fitted black armor that made him look much sturdier than before. But that wasn't all. The black smoke coming from Baru's entire body was more intense. Instead of a haze, it was now reminiscent of burning flames. His power was overwhelming. Jin-woo opened Baru's stat window. BRULV.max. Martial rank. The marshal acts as the leader of the army, of which there can be only one. If more than one soldier reaches the marshal rank, a hierarchy must be decided. The only ones who can possibly challenge the marshal rank are Greed and Igris, who are close to leveling up to the general rank. Jin-woo imagined it would be fun to watch the 3 soldiers battle for the top position, then gestured at the tree in front of them with his chin. Baru, attack it with your full power! Following his king's order, Baru expanded his body and howled. Scraya! It was the roar of a true beast. Baru's armor also transformed to fit his augmented frame. Once he was twice his normal size, he stomped toward the tree, then broke into a run, aiming full tilt at the ironclad tree. Bam! Baru's eyes widened. The tree should have snapped in half, but he'd managed only to dig a hole as deep as his wrist. This flustered the soldier who had previously ripped S-rank magic beasts apart like they were nothing. But ironclad trees were known for their defense power against physical attacks and their resistance to damages that weren't magic-based. This was good enough for Jin-woo. Satisfied with the result, he ordered Baru to stand down. Step aside! Baru drew back as Jin-woo called up the 2 Kamishrath daggers from his inventory. Boom. The daggers appeared in his hands. Okay. Guy? The ironclad tree whirled around, looking for the opponent who had punctured its stomach. Its eyes landed on Jin-woo instead and lumbered toward him. Seeing how slow it was, Jin-woo realized this magic beast really had nothing going for it except its high defense. That being said, its defense was nothing to laugh at. How well would Kamishrath work against it? Black energy spread out from the tips of his fingers and wrapped around the daggers. I need brute strength. As soon as he made the call, the 2 daggers became as heavy as 1,000 weights. So heavy that Jin-woo's arms and shoulders strained to hold them up. Time to see what 1,500 attack power can do. The blades of the 2 daggers began to quiver, as if channeling Kamishrath. As the ironclad tree had managed to make its way to Jin-woo, he stared it down and spun the daggers around to hold them in a reverse grip. Let's take it easy. He made a diagonal slash with his right hand. Swish. The sound of the air splitting was followed by the thud of something hitting the floor. The ironclad tree looked down. One of its thick, arm-like branches had been cleanly lopped off, and now lay on the ground. The magic beast discovered a wound bleeding tree sap and let out an ear-piercing roar. Guy! The tree might have been in pain, but Jin Wu was bursting with joy. He stared with amazement at the dagger that had easily sliced through the branch that had been as wide as a post. Wow! All it had taken was a gentle swing of the dagger. Jin Wu could hack at the tree with the demon monarch's dagger for eternity, and it still wouldn't do this type of damage to a regular tree, much less the boss. It was like slicing through butter. The dagger also felt great in his hand. Vmm. It had been a while since he'd been this excited about a weapon. My king! Baru called out urgently to him from his vantage point. I know. Jin Wu's response was relaxed as he glanced up. The ironclad tree had gone from upset to enraged. With its right appendage missing, the magic beast raised its left branch to try and crush Jin Wu, but it was already too late. Another quick slice of Kamish wrath and SHK. Gah! The ironclad tree screeched, having lost both arms. Awesome. Jin Wu nodded. He had verified what the daggers could do when swinging them around lightly. Now it was time to test how they performed when used to their full potential. The daggers respond excellently to magic power because they're made from dragon's bone, right? Jin Wu squeezed the dagger and poured mana into it. Then more mana. Then even more. When he focused every drop of his magic power into his right hand, he could see the black aura surrounding the blade practically exploding. From Baru's point of view, it looked like the aura distorted everything in the area. How was that possible? Baru stumbled back instinctively. Though his mind knew that it wasn't aimed at him, the sheer power forced him to retreat a few steps. Baru looked at his trembling hands. My liege. When it came to emotions, Baru had only ever felt loyalty toward Jin Wu, but for the first time, he learned how it felt to pity someone. The ironclad tree was unaware of its fate as it bellowed. Jiawa! Its bloodshot eyes were focused solely on Jin Wu. Its mouth was a gaping maw as wide as the building's entrance. It heaved its huge body forward to try to swallow Jin Wu whole. Jin Wu unleashed the concentrated magic power from the tip of the dagger. Go! He held nothing back, just as he had ordered Baru. Jin Wu threw his whole body, from his toes, legs, hips, shoulders, and even wrists into the attack. And the result was... what? He realized something was very wrong. Ack. SHHK, 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 SHHK. The black aura had shot from the tip of the dagger, slashing everything in front of it like the claws of a ferocious animal swiping the air. Jin Wu's enhanced eyesight allowed him to see the exact hundredth of a second the aura ripped the ironclad tree apart. Shit! The unstoppable power of the dagger left horrific marks on the gym's floor and walls behind the tree. Damn! Jin Wu was speechless. Clack! TMP, TMP. Little chunks of concrete tumbled from the large slash in the wall until the entire thing came crumbling down, unable to withstand the damage. Rumble! Thud! The walls of the gym had been reinforced with magic power so that hunters could train without holding back. Yet one side of the wall had collapsed from the single hit. Jin Wu looked at the rubble on the ground, appalled. Is this what the system meant by the strength of the weapons depending on the user? These magic-powered daggers made from dragon remains were the real deal. My liege. Baru was so overcome with emotion by his king's display of power that he flung himself to his knees in front of Jin Wu. Your humble servant cannot contain his awe at your might and power. Unfortunately for his mother, who loved historical dramas, Jin Wu was this close to banning them in the house. Still, he understood why Baru was so riled up. Jinwoo's own heart was racing at this unimaginable power. These were the traces of Kamish's wrath. Would a blow from a dragon large enough to block out the sky cause this much destruction? Jinwoo sucked his teeth as he took in the ironclad tree's gruesome remains, the collapsed wall, and the gouged-out floor. I should name these daggers Dragon's Claw instead of Kamish's wrath. Of course, the daggers were this powerful only because Jinwoo was wielding them. At that moment, a message popped up. Would you like to change the name of item? Kamish's wrath to item Dragon's Claw? Jinwoo was caught off guard by the system's unexpected response. I can change the name? He quickly canceled the order and breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the name hadn't changed. Phew! That was a close call. The craftsman would roll over in his grave if the name was changed to a cringy name like Dragon's Claw. Jinwoo couldn't help but laugh at the system's ever-so-literal interactions. In any case, he was more than satisfied with the power of his new weapons. Their sharpness and destructive power were on an entirely different level from his previous ones. Jinwoo smiled as he looked between them, and then returned them to the inventory. Now that the practice run is done, it was time to clean up. As he came off the high of the power of his new weapons, his heart ached at the sight of the collapsed wall of the gym. He'd only meant to borrow the gym for an afternoon and had ended up destroying it. What to do? Jinwoo pondered his next course of action and then called Jinchul. President Wu, please stay calm and hear me out first. I have about 300 ants who are excellent at manual labor, so... It had been 3 days since the gates disappeared. Jinwoo had kept himself busy with raids before then, but now he had nothing but free time. Instead, he lay in his bed, and like a bored student spinning a pen, he used ruler's authority to spin one of the Kamish's wrath daggers. He was interrupted by Jaina, who suddenly barged in on her way to the bathroom. When she opened his bedroom door, he sent the dagger back to inventory and pretended to do something else. You were spinning a dagger again, weren't you? Technically, he was training his ruler's authority skill, but from a doting little sister's point of view, it just looked like he was playing a dangerous game. Nope. Jaina squinted at her brother. He had gotten rid of the evidence, so although he was acting suspicious, she couldn't prove anything. As an ordinary human, there wasn't much she could do to catch her S-rank brother in a lie if he was going out of his way to look innocent. She stared at him through narrowed eyes for a few moments before eventually sighing. Jinwoo. Yeah. If you're that bored, why don't you get out of the house? You haven't taken a day off in a while. She sounded like a mother nagging her son. Jinwoo chuckled and closed his eyes. What would I do? Can't you make plans with someone? Like with a friend? A friend, huh? Jinwoo opened his eyes again as the words stuck in his head. Many people came to mind, but one stood out. She was probably in the same boat as he and every other hunter, forced to take a breather right now, and he still hadn't made good on his vow to treat her to a meal for accidentally getting a glimpse of her in the shower through his shadow soldier. He usually couldn't see her because they were both so busy, so this was the perfect opportunity. She might be spinning a dagger just like Jinwoo because she was bored out of her mind, for all he knew. Good idea, sis. Jaina flinched as Jinwoo suddenly bolted up from bed and strode over to her. Huh? Excuse me. Jinwoo passed his sister en route to the bathroom. She caught the unfamiliar look on his face and called after him. Wait, where are you going? Jinwoo grinned at her. On a date. Enough. Hain stopped swinging her wooden sword. She had practiced her swordsmanship until her white training uniform was soaked through with sweat. She turned around to face the master of the dojo, an older man in a similar uniform, who was missing an arm. He gestured for her to sit down, and Hain did so, kneeling politely as she put down her wooden sword. The old man was her swordsmanship teacher. As an S-rank hunter, she was nearly unmatched physically, but she still needed to train skills that played to her strengths. Hence, Hain had chosen this quiet Kondo dojo to practice the way of the sword whenever she had had time. Her teacher, Chiyul Song, who was proud of her for never wasting a single day, sat down across from her. "I sense much hesitation in your sword lately, Hain." His words compelled Hain to look up, her face grim. Chiyul made eye contact and continued softly. "I'm concerned that you may have developed fear in your heart." Hain said nothing, but she didn't have to. In addition to running a dojo, Chiyul went on raids as a hunter whenever the association requested his assistance, so he understood her fears. No one had ever seen a gate like the monolith before. There was no telling what kind of terrifying creatures would come out of it. Even the strongest people knew fear. In fact, the strong felt a fear in their bones that ordinary people would never know. Chiyul let his eyes shut and slowly nodded as he reflected on his past. "Of course you're scared. Why wouldn't you be? I've been there. I can't compare the magic beasts I've met to the magic beasts you've encountered, but that time I lost my arm." At that moment, the phone that Hain had tucked away in the corner so she wouldn't be disturbed began to ring. "How can a hunter not answer her phone?" "I'm sorry, master." Hain bowed in apology and ran to pick up. As Chiyul waited for her to wrap up her call so he could finish his story, he noticed a delighted look on her face. Hain tried her best to hide it, but because she was usually rather expressionless, Chiyul caught the change in her expression. Hain walked back to Chiyul after hanging up and cautiously told him, "Master, something came up, so I have to go." Her cheeks were flushed. Seeing her eyes lit up, Chiyul realized he may have made the wrong assumption. The hesitation he had seen in her sword hadn't come from fear. "Of course. Get going then." Bewildered, Chiyul nodded and gave her leave. "I'll be off." Hain left with a spring in her step. Chiyul gave a bemused smile as he watched her go. "I see. So that's it." "Uh-huh." Chiyul wondered who was lucky enough to garner the affections of such a charming and sincere young woman. Seeing his esteemed pupil so happy gratified him as well. "Isn't that Hunter Jin Woo-sung?" "What? Where? Damn! It really is Jin Woo-sung." The amusement park was packed with weekend visitors who recognized Jin Woo and gawked at him in amazement. "Who's the woman with him? His girlfriend? Wait a minute. Isn't that Hunter Hain Cha from the Hunters Guild? Seriously? Whoa! Those two are dating?" Jin Woo was accompanied by a woman with a short and neat hairstyle that allowed her to move freely. Not used to having so much attention on her, she lowered her head and murmured to Jin Woo, "Do you like these kinds of places?" Jin Woo answered with a smile. "Not particularly, but I've always wanted to come to a place like this at least once." Gone was the ice-cold glare he had when killing magic beasts. The man next to Hain had an impish grin on his face, and she couldn't help but notice how her heart sped up at the sight. Jin Woo was an outstanding S-rank hunter, so there was no way he didn't notice her racing heart either. She flushed at the realization. She asked another question in an attempt to distract him. "So why me?" "Because you're the only friend I have." "Pardon?" When had Jin Woo and Hain become friends? Hain looked up at him as she tried to recall, and Jin Woo smiled mischievously when their eyes met. "That's what you said to that weird statue, right?" "Oh, that." The day she had entered the double dungeon to save him, She'd said something to that effect to the angel statue inside. "What is your relationship to Jin Woo-sung?" "We're friends." Jin Woo was most likely referring to that. "You were listening to us?" "More like I overheard you. My hearing is better than most." It was slightly mortifying that instead of helping him, he'd ended up coming to her rescue. That was one of many times he'd saved her life. "By the way, what was the deal with that strange dungeon?" Jin Woo had promised to explain it to her someday, but he didn't think the time was right just yet. "I need to process some of my thoughts first. I still don't fully know what's what right now, but I'll tell you once I do." Hain nodded in understanding. As the conversation came to a lull, Jin Woo looked around them. "Over here. Please look over here, too. I'm a big fan, Hunter-sung." People had gathered around the couple like a swarm of bees, holding up their cell phones as if they'd run into celebrities on a busy street. In fact, most of them were more familiar with Jinwoo's face than they were with most of the A-list celebrities out there, since he had been shown on every TV channel after the appearance of the monolithic gate. Normally, Jin Woo would have shrugged it off with a smile, but he didn't want anything to interrupt this day off with a friend. "Come out." His hard-working, unpaid bodyguards, Igris and the 30 elite knights, emerged from the shadows and surrounded Jin Woo and Hain in a circle. Igris especially got to work, admonishing individuals taking flash photography with a wag of his index finger. Hain was flustered by their escort of knights. "Doesn't this just draw more attention? As long as we can't see the crowd, you know?" Hain found herself nodding at the strangely persuasive logic of his statement. She did feel more relaxed, shielded from the mob. When was the last time she'd left her house to do something fun? Hain had become a hunter 2 years ago, and she had never felt fully comfortable with taking a day off in that time. Mostly, she worried that her colleagues would get hurt when she wasn't on the job. At the same time, she worried about doing a bad job on every raid she participated in. Hain was always nervous and tense in some way. However, it's different when I'm with this man. She could depend on him. When Hain was with Jin Woo, she could forget about work and her colleagues' expectations, and she felt like she could go back to being a regular woman living her life. Hain took a step closer to Jin Woo without realizing it and blushed. "He smells nice." Looking at Hain's content expression, Jin Woo had just one regret. "I should have done this sooner." He scanned the various attractions and pointed at a drop tower. "Do you want to go on that?" "Sure." At the quick agreement, Jin Woo pointed at another ride. "What about that one?" "Okay. Or the one beside it? That looks good, too. Are you up for all of them?" "Yes, I am." Jin Woo gazed down at the blushing woman next to him and chuckled. "Huh? I guess I wasn't the only one who wanted to come here." He was relieved that she seemed to be enjoying herself. He gently grabbed her by the wrist and led her to the nearest ride. "Then let's go on all of them." Unfortunately, the ride wasn't as fun as he had hoped. Eek! Eek! Ah! Jin Woo had snagged a front seat, but while everyone behind him screamed their heads off, he watched the goings-on of the park as it zipped by. That kid's gonna drop his ice cream. Oh dear, I knew it. Wait, is the food court over there? But it's too early to eat dinner. Jin Woo was bored. As soon as the roller coaster started going at full throttle, his surroundings began to move like a slow-motion video. He could probably ride this roller coaster standing up if he wanted to. He tried very hard not to yawn as he looked over his shoulder. Behind him were Igris and a few other soldiers who had wanted to go on the ride, and behind them were civilians screaming with glee. Their facial muscles expressed their thrill and enjoyment. He could hear their hearts beating so hard They sounded like they were about to explode. Jin-woo put his hand on his chest to feel his own heart. He gave a wry smile as he felt his usual heartbeat, leaping up with all his might to smash his fist into the humongous stone statue. Now, that was thrilling. And that time I was chased by those centipedes in the penalty zone? That had been 10,000 times scarier than this. Jin-woo shook his head to get rid of these thoughts. Look at me thinking about monsters when I came all this way to have fun. He couldn't believe himself. And judging by the expression on his companion's face, she was in the same predicament. Ji-woo chortled and pulled Hain out of her thoughts. You aren't enjoying this, are you? Oh, no I am. He appreciated that he didn't have to yell, since she also had heightened senses. So how come you didn't scream once? This was the 5th ride they had been on. Every ride had claimed to be full of thrills, but Hain hadn't even let out a surprised "Oh!" Hain was an S-rank hunter as well, and though she wasn't as powerful as Jin-woo, she was above and beyond ordinary people. Jin-woo was relieved to see that it wasn't just him. At that moment, he was filled with a desire to show her the world through his eyes. Baru detected Jin-woo's intention and tried to stop him. My king, that might be dangerous for this woman. It's okay. If Hain falls, you make sure to catch her no matter what. And if you miss her, you know what'll happen, right? As you wish, my liege. With no one else to stop him, Jin-woo turned to Hain. Never mind these rides. Do you want to try something super fun? Something super fun? As soon as the roller coaster stopped, Jin-woo led an intrigued Hain to the main plaza. Wow! People were amazed by the sight of the black knights guarding the couple, but their exclamations soon turned to screams. Ah! What is that? The shadow soldiers pushed back the crowd to make space for a huge black magic beast that rose from the ground. It flapped its wings and roared at the sky. Cree! It was the first time Hain had seen a winged dragon this close. Her reaction wasn't much different from the onlookers. Oh my goodness! Hain stared at the creature in front of her. Ji-woo gestured to her. Quick, hop on! She seemed thrown for a loop as she spotted him already astride the winged dragon. You want me to get on that? He impatiently lifted her up using ruler's authority. Oh! Hain was caught off guard by the pull of the invisible force. But that was only the first of the reactions Jin-woo was expecting from her. It was merely the beginning. Hain's jaw hung open as she was situated behind Jin-woo. He gave an order to the dragon. Let's fly! Cree! As if he had been waiting for this moment, Kaisel flapped his enormous wings and launched into the sky. Hain gulped as she looked down at the people getting farther and farther away. This sensation was incomparable to riding a roller coaster. Her arms naturally wrapped around Jinwoo's waist. When they were high enough that the onlookers were out of view, Hain yelled, Oh, over there! Pardon? Why is that ant following us? Jin-woo craned his neck down and saw that Baru was closely following behind Kaisel. Jin-woo could help but laugh at seeing Baru's face scrunched in concentration. He's a lifeguard. Sorry? Hang on tight. The real ride starts now. What? But there was no need to explain further. Jin-woo felt Hain's arms tighten around his waist. If I was an ordinary man, she would have folded me in half. It was a testament to how frightened she was. On the other hand, Jin-woo was excited that his plan was going swimmingly so far. Kaisel! Maximum speed? Cree! As Kaisel shot off, Hain screamed for the first time that day. The small dragon split the air as he sped along. Whoosh! Kaisel took the couple to places only S-rank hunters could go. They ventured inside a rainy, windy storm cloud? They flew dangerously close to a high mountain and over an endless field of snow. Of all the places they went, the best by far was watching the sun set over the ocean. Kaisel slowed down, and the ocean breeze caressed their cheeks as the two watched the sun disappear into the horizon against an orange-colored sky. Hane's eyes shone like the crimson-tinged sky as she took in the marvelous sight. A question suddenly struck her. "Jinwoo." "Yes? Why did you even bother with the amusement park?" "That amusement park?" Jinwoo took his time in collecting his thoughts. "That's where I lost my father to a gate." "Oh." If Jinwoo's father had failed to close the gate and a dungeon break had happened, the amusement park would no longer be there. But thanks to his sacrifice, it was open and thriving. At first, Jinwoo had resented his father for leaving his family behind. But somehow, seeing other families having fun, there was comforting. And that was good enough for him. "I always wanted to go there at least once." In response, Hane simply hugged him without saying a word. He could feel her warmth on his back. "Thank you." Surprised, Jinwoo tried to look back at Hane, but she was clinging too closely to him. "What?" "I wanted to make sure to properly thank you. You've helped me in so many ways." Jinwoo could sense her sincerity as her body rested on his back, her breath ghosting over his neck and her heart causing a ruckus. Yes, that was good enough. Jinwoo smiled softly as he directed Kaisel to reverse course. "Where are we going now?" Hane sounded disappointed that they were heading back. Jinwoo answered, "There's something I want to show you." After flying a great distance, they landed in Japan. It was a restricted area, so not only were there no humans around, but there were also no animals, as they'd fled from the presence of magic beasts. Kaisel landed in a wide, forested location where they couldn't hear even the tiniest creature breathing. "Cree!" Kaisel lay flat on the ground to let them dismount. Jinwoo landed on the ground and turned around to help Hane. "Be care." Hane gently landed next to him and rolled her shoulders back before he could extend a helping hand. Jinwoo laughed at himself for having forgotten what she did for a living. "Where are we?" Hane had just experienced something beyond her wildest dreams, so she looked around with heightened expectations. However, there was nothing to see other than an endless expanse of trees. Jinwoo placed on the ground a blanket he had purchased from the system shop. "It won't be any fun if I tell you, so come here and lie down first." "I'm sorry." Had she misheard? But there's no way she, an S-rank hunter, could have heard wrong. Plus, Jinwoo himself had already sat down. "Come on, hurry." Jinwoo rushed her as if there was nothing odd about this, but Hane's heart felt like it was about to explode out of her chest. "Are you serious?" She checked again. Jinwoo nodded without a moment's hesitation. He made sure Hane was reluctantly approaching before fully lying down. Soon, she made up her mind and lay down next to him, ramrod straight. "I'm ready." Hane had her eyes squeezed shut. "Then open your eyes." Hane cautiously opened her eyes at Jinwoo's instructions, and he wordlessly pointed at the sky and the stars. "Oh!" Hane unconsciously let out a sigh as she gazed at the sea of stars above her. Beautiful. There was no other word to describe it. Pleased with her reaction, Jinwoo explained, "I saw this night sky when I came here to deal with a dungeon break." Tired, he'd lain down to get some rest, but he couldn't fall asleep because it had been too bright. Annoyed, he had opened his eyes to this array of starlight, his chest welling with emotions. "I thought about how nice it would be if I could stare up at this night sky with someone." That night, it had been just him and the stars in the quiet of the forest. He had hoped to share this sensation. this moment with another. And now, he felt at ease having someone close to him who felt the same way he did. Jin, who felt like a blight that had been in his heart, was gently melting away. Ain placed her hand on top of his. "May I hold your hand?" As if she wasn't already. A smile bloomed on Jinwoo's face, and he turned his hand over to interlock his fingers with hers. Her hand, cold yet soft to the touch, fit perfectly inside his. Countless stars shone down ever so quietly over the entwined couple.